The Galactic Council chamber was filled with silence after the final vote was cast. Dozens of alien species, tall and short, scaled and feathered, all sat in their high seats, their eyes glowing with judgment. In the middle of the room, the human delegates stood stiff, their faces pale but defiant. They already knew the outcome. Humanity was no longer welcome in the light of the galaxy. The council speaker, a tall being with glass-like skin, announced the words that echoed like a sentence of death. Humanity was cast out. No trade, no alliances, no protection. Their colonies would be stripped from the maps. Their fleets would be pushed beyond the border, into the cold darkness where no empire cared to go. The reason was simple. The other species feared them. Humanity grew too fast, spread too far, and learned too quickly. Where others took centuries to adapt, humans did it in decades. Where others were satisfied with safety, humans pushed forward into danger. That hunger unsettled the galaxy. The Council decided the best solution was exile. Ships came, armed and cold, escorting Earth's fleets away from the core systems. Humanity did not resist. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. To fight now was suicide, so their leaders stayed silent. Carrying the weight of humiliation, the galaxy believed it had solved the human problem forever. But exile did not kill them. In the far reaches of space, beyond the mapped stars, the human fleets gathered. Old warships, patched together freighters and colony carriers all moved as one. Their engines glowed faintly against the endless black. Children stared out from viewports at strange suns they would never land upon. Soldiers sharpened their blades and polished their rifles, waiting for orders that never came. Farmers and engineers began their work on worlds that no other species cared for. Barren rocks, lifeless moons, dying systems. The galaxy thought those places were worthless. For humanity, they became home. The first years were hard. Supplies ran low. Many ships broke down. Disease spread in the dark. Hunger was constant, and yet they endured. Humans were used to hardship. On Earth, they had survived ice ages, wars, and plagues. In exile, they did the same. Slowly, painfully, they adapted. The children grew up under strange skies, knowing only that their people had been rejected. They were told the stories in whispers, how the galaxy feared them, how the Council had turned its back. Those words sank deep into their hearts, becoming a fire that never went out. In secret, humanity began to build. Deep under the crust of forgotten moons, they hollowed out caverns to hide their forges. In orbit around dead planets, they built stations that pulsed with stolen energy. Old ships were torn apart and rebuilt stronger, faster, quieter. Engineers worked without rest, creating machines that even the galaxy had not imagined. They worked in silence because silence was their weapon now. Years became decades. The galaxy moved on, laughing at the memory of humanity. Other wars began, other empires rose and fell. But on the edge of space, in the shadows no one cared to look at, humanity was not dying. It was changing. Scouts whispered of strange disappearances near the void. Merchant ships that strayed too far never returned. Their wreckage was never found. Some spoke of dark shapes moving between stars. Ships without markings, gliding silently like hunters. The Council dismissed the rumors. After all, humanity was gone. They could not return, but those rumors were true. From the blackness, fleets of human ships moved like ghosts. Their hulls carried no light. Their weapons left no survivors. They attacked only when they wished to, striking and vanishing without a trace. The galaxy had thrown humanity into the shadows. In the shadows, humanity had learned to survive. In the shadows, they had become something more, and now the silence of the void held a new kind of danger. For the Council did not realize that in trying to erase humanity, they had given them the very weapon that no empire could match. Patience. Humanity was waiting, watching, preparing, and one day, when the galaxy least expected it, the outcasts would return, not as beggars, not as refugees, but as masters of the dark. The void was silent, but in that silence humanity worked. At first, the banished fleets had nothing but broken ships, empty storage holds, and tired people. Their colonies were built on dead rocks with thin air and poisoned ground. Yet where other species saw only death, humanity saw opportunity. They stripped those worlds bare. Every stone, every trace of metal, every drop of frozen water was pulled into their forges. Engineers became kings. Builders became warriors. Farmers grew food in machines that hummed deep underground, using light stolen from artificial suns. The people suffered, but they did not stop. Each day brought new failure, but also new strength. The children of exile grew differently from the children of Earth. They learned to breathe recycled air, to eat food that was born in labs, to sleep under ceilings of steel instead of open skies. Their games were not simple games. They were drills. Their education was not only about numbers and words, but also about engines, ships, and survival. Every child was taught that the galaxy had cast them aside, and that only in the darkness could they rise again. Generations passed, and with them came transformation. The humans of the shadows were no longer the humans the Council remembered. Their bodies adapted to harsher worlds, their skin toughened against radiation, their eyes grew sharp in the dim light of space stations. They became faster, harder, and more disciplined than the soft citizens of the Council worlds. They had lived with hunger, so they knew the value of food. They had lived with silence, so they learned the value of secrets. In time, whispers spread beyond their hidden borders. A merchant convoy traveling too far from the trade lanes vanished without a trace. A mining outpost found its storage emptied overnight, though no ships had been seen. Alien captains spoke in low voices of ghost fleets that moved without engines, ships that swallowed light and struck like shadows. The Council dismissed the tales. Humanity was broken, they said. They cannot return, but the humans were not broken. They were building. In hidden caverns carved into asteroids, they designed ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their hulls were black, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Their engines ran silent, leaving no trail. They were fast, agile, and deadly. Each vessel was a predator in the void, waiting for prey to wander too close. Their weapons were just as terrifying. Humans learned to harness old technologies and twist them into something new. Rail cannons that fired silent death across space. Energy weapons that left no signal until they struck. Drones that could slip through defenses and tear apart a fleet from within. And behind every weapon stood a human pilot or commander who had been raised for one purpose, to endure and to strike. It was not only ships and weapons they built, it was unity. In exile, there were no nations anymore, no borders, no divisions. On Earth, humanity had fought endless wars with itself. But in the void, there was only survival. And survival required one law: humanity above all. Every voice, every hand, every mind was bent toward the same purpose. They had been abandoned, betrayed, forgotten, but together they would never fall again. This unity gave them something no Council species could match: willpower. The Council's empires were soft. Their people lived in safety, far from war, depending on treaties and rules. But humanity had no treaties, no safety. They lived on the edge of extinction every single day. That sharpened them into something unbreakable. And so in the silence of the void, the seeds of the Shadow Empire were planted. The galaxy still believed that humanity was gone, erased, another failed species swallowed by the endless dark. But beneath the surface of dead worlds, in hidden stations circling dying stars, humanity was preparing. The outcasts were turning into predators. The forgotten were becoming hunters. And soon the galaxy would learn the truth, that by rejecting humanity, they had given birth to something far more dangerous. The Shadow Empire was rising. The first encounter, the galaxy had long forgotten humanity. To most, the outcasts were only a story told in military schools, a warning of what happened when a species grew too bold. The younger generations of alien leaders had never even seen a human. To them, the idea of humanity returning was nothing more than myth. But myths have power, and sometimes they come alive. It began with a patrol ship near the border of the Council's influence. A small vessel crewed by 6 alien officers drifted through the black, scanning the void for smugglers. For weeks they found nothing. The stars were cold and the silence heavy. Then, without warning, their sensors flickered. A shadow appeared against the light of a distant star, so large that it blocked out half the sky. The patrol commander ordered the crew to focus the scanners. The readings made no sense. The shape was massive, but it emitted almost no energy. No engine trails, no signal codes, no transponders. It should not have been there. Then the shadow moved. The patrol ship's alarm screamed as something fast approached. Before the commander could speak, the hull of his ship shook violently. The lights flickered, Systems failed, and the control panels went dark. The crew scrambled to restore power, but the ship was already trapped. Outside the viewport, a black vessel hung silently, so close that its armored surface looked like a wall of night. No insignia, no colors, no lights. The alien crew stared in frozen horror as a single message flashed on their console. It was not written in their language. It was human. Then the signal died. The patrol ship was never seen again. At first, the council dismissed the loss. Ships vanished all the time in the void. Pirates, malfunctions, accidents. But then another patrol disappeared. Then a convoy. Then an entire outpost went silent, its last transmission a broken scream. Something was moving in the darkness, and the whispers returned. Ghost fleets, shadow ships, and one name, humanity. The council tried to laugh it away. Humanity had been banished generations ago. Their fleets were broken, their people scattered. They could not have survived, let alone built ships that could erase entire patrols. But in their private chambers, fear grew. Reports began piling up. Survivors from fringe worlds spoke of attacks that came without warning. Black ships that struck with perfect precision, then vanished before a response could be sent. Weapons so silent and devastating that defenses were useless. No survivors, no wreckage, only silence. For the first time in centuries, the council felt hunted. Deep in the void, humanity watched. Their scouts reported every reaction, every dismissal, every rising panic. The Shadow Empire did not reveal its full strength, not yet. These first encounters were not conquest. They were tests, probes, messages written in blood, and the message was clear. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was not broken. Humanity had returned. The outcasts were no longer begging for a place in the light. They had found strength in the dark. Now they were ready to show the galaxy what exile had forged. The galaxy had grown soft. For centuries, the council species lived under the shield of treaties and fleets so vast that no outsider dared challenge them, but that illusion was breaking. Piece by piece, system by system, the shadows were tearing it apart. It began small, trade convoys vanishing, stations cut off from supplies, colonies waking to find their defense grids shut down without a shot fired. At first, these attacks were blamed on pirates or rival empires. But soon the patterns became impossible to ignore. The strikes were too precise, too organized, too silent. The council sent warships into the void. Entire squadrons patrolled the borders, armed with the best weapons of the age. They expected to scare away raiders. Instead, the patrols returned broken, if they returned at all. Survivors spoke of ships blacker than space itself, moving with impossible speed, firing weapons that sliced through shields as if they were paper. In the council chambers, fear grew. The whispers now had teeth. Humanity, they said. The name spread across the stars like fire, a curse that no one wanted to speak but everyone believed. But this was no curse. It was a revelation. In the silence of exile, humanity had learned patience. Now that patience was over, the Shadow Empire struck where it chose and always with purpose. They did not destroy for sport. They crippled. They erased. They broke the legs of giants one step at a time. On one world, the supply lines of an entire empire collapsed in a single night. Drones slipped into warehouses, turning food stores into ash. On another, the defense network went dark, its command center gutted by a single precise blast from orbit. And then there were the disappearances. Fleets sent to respond never came back. Colonies that sent distress signals were never heard from again. The galaxy began to feel the fear that humanity had carried for generations. The fear of the void, the fear of silence, the fear of shadows moving unseen. Still, the council tried to deny it. They called the rumors dangerous lies. They told their citizens not to panic. But the more they spoke, the weaker they sounded. Everyone knew the truth. Humanity was out there, and they were no longer begging for survival. They were taking control. The most terrifying part was not their weapons or their ships, but their method. The Shadow Empire had no capital, no senate, no council halls. There was no world to bomb, no throne to topple, no single leader to kill. Their empire lived everywhere and nowhere. It was in the hearts of their people, forged through generations of suffering, carried like blood in their veins. The council's armies could not fight what they could not see. Their maps showed empty void, but in that void lived predators. Their weapons could fire at targets, but the shadows offered none. Humanity had become what the galaxy feared most, not an empire of worlds, but an empire of will. And that will was unbreakable. In the darkness, human fleets gathered. Not massive armadas of glory, but waves of hunters. Each ship was a blade, each crew sharpened by survival. They struck like wolves, tearing at the weak points until the prey collapsed. And once a world was broken, humanity vanished again, leaving only silence behind. No banners, no speeches, no demands, only fear. For the galaxy had forgotten what humanity was capable of. They thought humans could only adapt to light. They did not understand that humans were born to survive the dark. The rise of the hidden masters had begun, and now the council could no longer laugh. The galaxy finally realized its mistake. By rejecting humanity, they had not erased a threat, they had created one far greater. The shadows had teeth and they were closing in. The galaxy had lived too long in comfort. Its people believed that wars were things of the past, settled with treaties and debates in shining halls. But that illusion shattered when the shadows moved. It began quietly. Worlds on the far edge of council space went silent. At first, the silence was dismissed as communication failures, but then larger colonies vanished. Mining stations, trade hubs, even entire fleets gone, as if the void had swallowed them whole. And then one day, the shadows no longer hid. The council had gathered its grand fleet at the border, a force of thousands of ships from dozens of species. The stars burned bright with their engines and their weapons glowed, ready to fire. The commanders stood proud, believing that this show of strength would scatter the raiders once and for all. But when the shadows came, the galaxy saw the truth. Out of the blackness, human ships emerged. Not the old rusting warships the council remembered, but vessels sleek and terrible, forged from decades of exile. Their hulls swallowed light. Their engines made no sound. Their weapons gleamed with unnatural power. Against the backdrop of the stars, they looked less like machines and more like predators, alive and watching. The council fleet opened fire. Beams of light, torrents of plasma, missiles that could shatter moons all rushed forward in a storm. And yet the shadows slipped through. The human ships moved with impossible speed, weaving between blasts, striking where no shield could stop them. One by one, the proud warships of the council fell. Explosions tore across the sky, burning wrecks drifted into the void. Entire squadrons were erased before they could even fire again. The galaxy watched in horror as its strongest force was broken like glass. And then, in the silence that followed, a single transmission cut through the void. It was not in the alien tongues of the council. It was in human words we remember. The signal ended, but its meaning echoed in every chamber, every throne, every council hall across the stars. Humanity had not forgotten the exile, the betrayal, the humiliation. They had carried it like fire in their hearts, and now that fire burned the galaxy, the council tried to respond. They called for negotiations, for peace, for compromise, but no answer came. Humanity did not want treaties. They did not want apologies. They did not want to rejoin the council's circle. They had built something greater. The Shadow Empire was no longer hidden. Fleets appeared in every sector, striking with perfect coordination. Trade routes collapsed. Governments fell. Entire species bent their knees not to treaties but to survival. The galaxy had believed that humanity was weak when it stood in the light. Now they learned the truth. Humanity was unstoppable when it lived in the dark, and the most terrifying part was not the ships or the weapons. It was the silence. Humanity did not declare themselves rulers. They did not plant flags or demand tribute. They simply moved, dismantling the galaxy piece by piece until resistance felt useless. The outcasts had become masters. In the void where no one had expected life to endure, humanity had thrived. They had learned patience, discipline, unity. And now they had revealed themselves not as beggars, not as refugees, but as predators. An empire with no capital, no borders, no throne. An empire carved into the very shadows of space. The council realized too late that their greatest mistake had not been fearing humanity. Their greatest mistake had been underestimating what exile could forge. For in trying to erase humanity, they had created the greatest rival the galaxy had ever seen. And now, the stars themselves whispered the same truth across every world. In every language, humanity had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same again.